Hello everyone, and welcome to our quiet corner of history. Tonight, let's talk about a profession, or perhaps a service, that sounds wonderfully out of place. Imagine for a moment, in the age of castles, knights, and grand tapestries, when you think of medieval nobles, you probably picture them feasting, jousting, or perhaps composing poetry. But have you ever considered if they had manicurists? It sounds almost absurd, doesn't it? The idea of a lady or lord sitting down for a nail trim seems like a modern luxury. But tonight, we're going to explore those little, forgotten details of personal care. If you enjoy these gentle dives into the past, these stories that aren't about great battles but about the quiet, human moments, feel free to give us a like or subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to see in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what the world looks like outside your window. Alright, the hour is late. Let's dim the lights a little further, get comfortable, and together, we'll step softly back in time to uncover the quiet elegance of the Middle Ages, right at their very fingertips. To understand something as intimate as nail care in the Middle Ages, we first need to paint a picture of the world in which medieval nobles lived. It was a world built on stark contrasts and a rigid, visible hierarchy. The vast majority of the population, the peasantry, lived a life dictated by the seasons and endless manual labor. Their hands were their primary tools, calloused, stained by the soil, scarred from work with crude implements. Their hands told a story of hardship, of survival, of a life lived in constant contact with the earth. The nobility, however, lived in a different reality. Their world was one of castles and courts, of power, politics, and performance. For a nobleman or noblewoman, their very body was a symbol. It was a testament to their privileged position, a physical manifestation of their God-given right to rule. And in this highly visual culture, where your clothing, your posture, and your speech all broadcast your status, your hands were one of the most powerful and immediate signals of your rank. Why the hands? Because they were idle. The hands of a noble were conspicuously free from the signs of toil. They were not calloused from gripping a plow, stained from dyeing wool, or roughened by scrubbing floors. They were soft, pale, and clean. This idleness was, in itself, the ultimate status symbol. It declared to the world that you did not need to work for your sustenance. Others worked for you. A peasant's hands showed their labor, but a noble's hands showed their leisure, their authority, their very separateness from the common masses. This distinction was not just a matter of social pride, it was deeply woven into the medieval worldview. Cleanliness was often associated with godliness and moral purity. While their standards of hygiene were vastly different from our own, a full bath might be a weekly or even less frequent event. Personal grooming was still a matter of importance for the upper classes. They washed their hands and faces daily, especially before and after meals, a practice that was both practical and ritualistic. They combed their hair, cleaned their teeth with linen cloths and herbal powders, and took great care with their expensive, often ostentatious, clothing. Within this context of performative status and a belief in cleanliness as a virtue, the care of one's fingernails found its place. Dirty, broken, or ragged nails would have been seen as a sign of neglect, of coarseness, or worse, of belonging to the laboring class. For a noble, whose hands might be extended to be kissed by a subordinate, offered to a dance partner, or clasped in prayer in the chapel, the appearance of their fingertips was a crucial detail in the overall presentation of their noble self. The expectation was for nails to be kept short, neat, and immaculately clean. Long nails were impractical and often associated with laziness, untrustworthiness, or even demonic figures in some religious art. The ideal was a clean, well-defined, and healthy-looking nail, framing a fingertip that was smooth and unblemished. This wasn't about fashion in the modern sense, with colors or elaborate shapes, but about order, cleanliness, and the quiet, constant maintenance of one's high station. This awareness was instilled from a very young age, a silent lesson in what it meant to inhabit a noble body. Now let's imagine you are part of this world. You are young, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, a child of a noble house, sent to serve in the household of a powerful duke, or a renowned lady to learn the ways of the court. It is a world of echoing stone corridors, vast halls draped in tapestries, and the constant, quiet rustle of silk and wool. You are learning to read, perhaps, to play a musical instrument, to handle a hawk, and most importantly, to navigate the intricate and unspoken rules of courtly life. One afternoon you are given a simple task. The Duchess, a woman of great standing and famous for her piety and grace, is sitting by a window, embroidering a fine piece of silk with her ladies-in-waiting. She asks you to fetch her silver needle case from a small wooden chest across the room. Your heart thumps a little with a mixture of pride and nervousness. To be noticed, to be given a task directly by the Duchess, is a significant honor. You cross the stone floor, your soft leather shoes making almost no sound. You open the chest, its iron hinges sighing softly. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, is the small, intricately carved silver case. You pick it up carefully. It feels cool and heavy in your palm. As you turn to bring it back to her, you walk into a shaft of sunlight slanting through the high arched window. For a fleeting moment, the light illuminates your own hand, holding the precious object. And in that moment, you see your hands as you never have before. You have been playing in the castle grounds this morning, perhaps skipping stones across the moat, or climbing a low-hanging branch of an old oak tree. You wash your hands before entering the Duchess's chambers, of course, but the light is unforgiving. You see a faint, dark line of dirt still stubbornly lodged under the nail of your forefinger. Your nails themselves, you realize with a sudden jolt of shame, are not perfectly even. One is slightly longer than the other, another has a tiny, ragged edge. It is a detail no one else has likely noticed. The Duchess herself will probably not see it. But you have seen it. And as you approach her, your steps suddenly feel clumsy, your confidence evaporating. The Duchess looks up and smiles gently as you extend your hand to give her the case. Her own hand rises to meet yours, to take the object. Her hand seems to float in the air. The skin is pale, almost translucent, with fine blue veins visible beneath the surface. Her fingers are long and slender. And her nails, they are perfect. They are trimmed into a neat, rounded shape, no longer than the tip of her finger. They are clean, with a faint, healthy sheen, as if they have been polished with a soft cloth. There is an order and a tranquility to her hand that makes your own feel clumsy, grubby, and utterly common. She takes the needle case, her fingers brushing against yours for a brief instant. Her touch is soft. "Thank you, child," she says, her voice as smooth as her skin. She turns back to her embroidery, and the moment is over. But for you, something has changed. You retreat to your place by the wall, your cheeks burning. You curl your fingers into your palm, hiding your nails from sight. You have just learned one of the most important lessons of the court, a lesson never spoken aloud. You have learned that nobility is not just in your name, your clothes, or your education. It is in every tiny detail. It is in the way you stand, the way you speak, and in the immaculate, undeniable statement of a pair of clean, well-kept hands. From this day forward, you will never look at your own fingertips in the same way again. You understand now that they, too, are part of the performance. The lesson you learned in the Duchess's chamber was a profound one, settling deep into your understanding of the world. It was a lesson in detail, a lesson in the quiet but constant performance of nobility. But this realization naturally led to a practical question. How was this state of perfection achieved? What did the medieval equivalent of a manicure set look like? The answer, like so many things in the Middle Ages, lies in a combination of simple utility and surprising resourcefulness. We must first dispense with any image of a dedicated nail salon or a specialized titled manicurist. Such a profession did not exist. The care of a noble's body was an intimate affair, part of a suite of personal services performed by trusted attendants. For a noblewoman, this duty fell to her ladies-in-waiting or a personal maid, often a younger gentlewoman herself, known as a damoiselle. For a nobleman, it was the responsibility of his valet or a high-ranking page. These tasks were woven into the larger ritual of dressing and grooming that began each day, a process that reinforced the status of the noble and the subservient, yet privileged, role of their attendant. The toolkit for this task was humble and multi-purpose, a far cry from the glittering array of modern implements. The primary tool for trimming and shaping nails was, quite simply, a small, very sharp knife. Often, this would be the same kind of penknife used for sharpening goose quills for writing. These knives, with their fine points and keen edges, were personal and valuable items. In the hands of a skilled and steady servant, such a knife could be used to pare away the nail with precision, following the natural curve of the fingertip. This, of course, required immense trust. A slip of the hand could easily cause a cut, a blemish that would mar the very perfection they sought to create. The process was slow, deliberate, and spoke volumes of the confidence between the master or mistress and their servant. After the initial shaping with the knife, the edges would be smoothed. For this, a variety of fine abrasives were used. A piece of pumice stone, a volcanic rock light enough to float on water, was a common choice, its porous surface perfect for gentle filing. Smooth-grained sandstone or slate could also be shaped for this purpose. In some cases, finely crafted metal files existed, though these were luxury items. A more organic and surprisingly effective alternative was the dried, rough skin of certain fish, like the dogfish, which served as a natural and disposable sort of sandpaper. The servant would carefully work this file against the nail edge, removing any roughness left by the knife and creating a perfectly smooth, rounded contour. Cleaning was paramount. To remove that telltale line of dirt from beneath the nail, a pointed implement was required. This could be made of carved wood, polished bone, or ivory for the wealthy. Sometimes, the tip of the knife itself would be used with extreme care. The goal was to leave the underside of the nail tip immaculately clean, a detail that spoke of a life utterly removed from any form of manual grit or grime. Finally, to achieve that desirable, healthy sheen, the nail would be buffed. This was done with a piece of soft, supple leather, typically chamois or doeskin, or even a simple scrap of fine linen or wool. The servant would rub the cloth briskly back and forth across the nail plate. This friction, combined with the natural oils of the skin and nail, would create a subtle, pearlescent luster, not a glossy shine like modern polish, but a soft glow that signified health and meticulous care. Beyond the tools, various concoctions were used to care for the hands themselves. Before the grooming began, a noble would often soak their hands in a basin of warm water. This was rarely just plain water. It would be infused with fragrant and beneficial herbs and flowers. Chamomile might be added for its soothing properties, rosemary for its cleansing scent, or rose petals simply for their luxurious perfume. This soak would soften the cuticles, making them easier to gently push back with a wooden stick, and leave the hands smelling pleasant. To keep the skin soft and pale, a key indicator of nobility, lotions and balms were used. These were simple preparations, often made in the castle's own stillroom. Almond oil or olive oil formed the base, mixed with beeswax to give it substance, and infused with the essences of flowers like lavender or lily. Lemon juice, a prized commodity, was sometimes used for its bleaching properties, to whiten the skin of the hands and perhaps even the nails themselves. Every step of the process was designed to create an image of effortless, natural perfection. Now let us return to you, that young noble at court. Several years have passed since that day in the Duchess's solar. You are older now, more accustomed to the rhythms and expectations of your life. The lesson of the hands has become second nature. The maintenance of your own person is a weekly, if not more frequent, ritual, a quiet moment of order in a life that can be filled with the noise of politics, hunting, and courtly ceremony. It is a quiet afternoon. The summer heat has mellowed, and a soft, golden light filters through the glass of your private chamber, painting patterns on the stone floor. You are seated in a high-backed wooden chair, a book lying open but unread in your lap. Before you, kneeling on a cushion, is your personal attendant. For a lord, he might be a young man named Will, your valet. For a lady, she might be Agnes, your most trusted maid. Agnes brings a small ceramic basin filled with warm water. As she sets it on a low stool before you, a gentle steam rises, carrying the sweet, calming scent of lavender and rose petals that have been steeping within. You place your hands into the water, and a sigh of contentment escapes your lips. The warmth seeps into your skin, a welcome comfort. You close your eyes for a moment, simply enjoying the sensation. After a few minutes of soaking, Agnes takes one of your hands gently in hers and pats it dry with a soft linen towel. Her touch is familiar, respectful, and incredibly deft. She takes a small, pointed tool carved from ivory and, with meticulous care, cleans beneath each of your nails. There is little dirt to be found, for you are always careful, but the ritual must be observed. Every potential imperfection must be addressed. Then, she takes up the small, sharp knife. You watch, completely relaxed, as she holds your finger steady. There is no fear, only trust. You have done this countless times. Her movements are economical and precise. The blade makes a soft, scraping sound as she pares away a tiny sliver of nail, creating a perfect, rounded shape. She works her way from thumb to little finger, her focus absolute. The tiny, crescent-shaped clippings fall onto a piece of cloth laid across her lap. Next comes the file, a smooth, gray piece of slate. The sound it makes is a soft, rhythmic rasping, a soothing whisper in the quiet room. Sh, shhh, shhh. She moves it back and forth, erasing any hint of roughness, ensuring the edge of each nail is as smooth as a river stone. Her head is bowed in concentration, a stray lock of her brown hair falling across her forehead. When she is satisfied that the shape and texture are perfect, she sets aside the file and picks up a small square of soft chamois leather. This is the final step in the physical shaping. The buffing begins. It is a faster, more energetic movement. The leather schemes across your nails, and you can feel a faint warmth from the friction. You watch as a soft, natural luster begins to emerge on the surface of your nails, like the inner glow of a pearl. Finally, Agnes opens a small silver pot. Inside is a fragrant, pale balm made of beeswax and almond oil, scented with lily of the valley. She takes a small amount on her fingertip and begins to massage it into your hands, first into the palms, then the back of your hands, and finally, with particular care, into the cuticles and the skin around each nail. The massage is firm but gentle, and the delicate floral scent is wonderfully calming. She finishes her work, and holds your hand for a moment before placing it back in your lap. You look down at your own two hands, now resting beside the open book. They are transformed. They look pale, elegant, and serene. The nails are perfectly shaped, immaculately clean, and they gleam with a soft, healthy light. They are the hands of a noble. They are hands that do not labor. They are hands that are fit to be seen, to gesture, to command, to pray. In this quiet, intimate ritual, your status is reaffirmed. It is a moment of pure, ordered calm. The world outside, with its mud, its work, its chaos, feels a million miles away. Here, in this sunlit room, with the scent of lavender and the quiet focus of your servant, you are reminded of who you are. This simple, humble toolkit, the knife, the file, the cloth, has not just groomed your nails, it has polished your identity. The quiet ritual of grooming, performed in the privacy of a sunlit chamber, was not an end in itself. It was a preparation, a rehearsal for the public stage of courtly life. Once perfectly attended to, a noble's hands became powerful instruments in a silent and sophisticated language of status, power, and emotion. The clean skin, the neat nails, the graceful gestures, they all communicated a wealth of information without a single word being spoken. This language was understood by all within the elite circle and was a constant, subtle undercurrent in every social interaction. Nowhere was this language more potent than in the complex and highly ritualized game of courtly love, or l'amour courtois. This was the elaborate code of chivalric and romantic conduct that governed the relationships between knights and ladies at the high medieval courts. It was a world of poetic admiration, unrequited longing, and devoted service, and hands were absolutely central to its performance. A knight would pledge himself to the service of his chosen lady, not as a husband, but as a devoted admirer and champion. This pledge was often sealed by him kneeling and placing his own hands between hers, a gesture of fealty that mirrored the one he would make to his feudal lord. In this moment, the quality of the lady's hands was paramount. Her soft, pale, and perfectly groomed hands signified her high status and her worthiness to receive such a profound oath. They were the hands of a superior being, capable of inspiring great deeds. In return for his devotion, a lady might bestow a favor upon her knight, a ribbon from her dress, a sleeve, or a perfumed glove. This small token would be passed from her hand to his. The image of her elegant fingers, with their neatly shaped nails, offering this symbol of her esteem, would be an image the knight would treasure. He would tie the favor to his helmet or his lance, carrying the memory of her touch and the vision of her perfect hand into the tournament, or even onto the battlefield. It was a tangible link to the idealized beauty and refinement he served. Poets of the era would extol the virtues of their beloveds in verse, frequently praising their lily-white hands, or fingertips like rose petals. This poetic ideal implicitly included the nails. No troubadour would sing praises to a hand with ragged, dirty nails. The beauty was holistic, a complete picture of aristocratic perfection. Beyond the theater of romance, hands were critical tools in the daily performance of social etiquette and power. At a great feast, for example, a noble's every move was observed. In an age before the widespread use of forks, many foods were eaten with the fingers. The manner in which a person took a piece of meat from a common platter, broke a piece of bread, or seasoned their food from a shared salt cellar was a direct reflection of their breeding. To do so with grace, using only the tips of the first few fingers, keeping the palm clean, was the mark of refinement. This required, of course, that the fingertips and nails themselves be impeccably clean. The very act of eating became a display of one's civilized nature. Furthermore, gestures of power were often conveyed through the hands. A king or a great lord extending his hand, adorned with a heavy signet ring, for a vassal to kiss was a clear and powerful symbol of the hierarchy. The perfect condition of that hand, clean, unblemished, nails neatly trimmed, served to naturalize and legitimize that power. It was the hand of someone born to rule, untouched by the grime of the world. In tense diplomatic negotiations or at council meetings, the hands of the participants were closely watched. Fidgeting, anxious hands might betray weakness or deceit, while calm, steady, well-groomed hands could project an aura of confidence, authority, and trustworthiness. Even in the most private acts of devotion, the hands played a public role. Piety was a virtue to be performed, and the most common image of prayer was of two hands, palms together, raised in supplication to God. Illuminated manuscripts, the precious, hand-painted books of the era, are filled with depictions of saints, kings, and noble patrons at prayer. In these stylized images, the figures are almost invariably shown with long, slender, elegant hands and clean, well-defined nails. This was the artistic and spiritual ideal. To offer up dirty or unkempt hands to God would have been seen as a sign of disrespect, a reflection of a disordered soul. Cleanliness, once again, was intertwined with godliness, and the hands were the primary agents of this pious display. Nowhere were all these threads of meaning, status, romance, power, and piety more visibly woven together than at a great feast. So let us return to that world, to your place as a young noble, now fully versed in these silent codes. Imagine you are seated at a long trestled table in the great hall of a powerful baron. The room is alive with noise and light. Torches flicker in iron sconces on the stone walls, casting dancing shadows up to the high, timbered ceiling from which hang the baron's colorful banners. The air is thick with the smells of roasted meat, wood smoke, spiced wine, and the press of 100 bodies. The sound is a symphony of clattering plates, boisterous laughter, the music of a minstrel's lute, and the baying of hunting dogs scavenging for scraps under the tables. You are seated at a place of some honor, not at the high table with the baron and his family, but close enough to observe them clearly. You look towards the head of the hall. The baron, a large man with a thick beard, is telling a story, his voice booming across the hall. He laughs and gestures for more wine, and you notice his hand. It is a powerful, capable-looking hand, but it is also clean. A heavy gold ring with a dark red stone sits on his forefinger, and you can see that his nails are cut short and square, with no dirt beneath them. His hand is a perfect contradiction. It looks strong enough to wield a sword, yet it is clean enough to signify he no longer needs to. It is the hand of a warrior turned ruler. Your gaze drifts to the baroness seated beside him. She is listening to a young knight who has leaned in close to speak to her, his words a low murmur against the hall's din. She smiles at something he says, a polite, practiced smile, and for a moment she raises her hand to her mouth, a gesture of delicate modesty. In the flickering torchlight, you see the whiteness of her skin and the perfect, pale ovals of her nails. Her gesture is a shield, but it is also a display. The knight's eyes linger on her hand for a second longer than necessary. You understand this exchange perfectly. It is the game of courtly love, played out in miniature, with her refined hand as one of the key pieces on the board. You take a sip of wine from your own pewter goblet, the metal cool against your lips. As you set it down, you glance across at a table further down the hall, where some of the household knights and men-at-arms are seated. One of them, a man you recognize from the training yard, tears a piece of roasted chicken from the bone with his fingers, his movements hearty and efficient. You notice his hands. They are clean, as etiquette demands, but they bear the marks of his trade. The knuckles are slightly swollen, a scar runs across the back of his hand, and his nails, while trimmed, lack the meticulous, uniform shape of the baron's or your own. The difference is subtle, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but to your court-trained eye, it is as clear as the coat of arms on a banner. It is the difference between a man who fights and a man who commands the fighters. A platter of figs and dates is passed down your table. You reach out to take one. As you do, you are suddenly, intensely aware of your own hand. You remember the lesson from years ago, and the countless grooming rituals since. You consciously hold your fingers in a graceful arch, picking up a single sweet fig with just your thumb and forefinger. Your own nails, you note with a quiet flicker of satisfaction, are clean and neatly shaped. They catch the light with that same soft, pearlescent sheen you once admired on the Duchess's hand. In this moment, you are not just eating. You are participating in the great, silent conversation of the medieval court. Your hand, in its simple act of taking food, is broadcasting your identity. It says you belong here. It says you understand the rules. It says you are refined, clean, and a member of the privileged few whose hands are not for labor, but for leisure, for prayer, and for the delicate, powerful art of the gesture. And so, through the quiet ritual in the solar, and the grand performance in the great hall, the medieval nobles' hands told their silent story. This meticulous, almost devotional care of the fingertips was not a trivial vanity. It was a fundamental thread in the complex tapestry of medieval aristocratic identity. It was a constant, subtle practice that reinforced the boundaries of class, communicated a sophisticated social language, and upheld an ideal of physical and moral purity. This delicate art, however, is a piece of the past that has been largely swept into the dust of history, an elegance that is easily forgotten. Why has such an intimate and revealing practice faded from our popular historical memory? Primarily it is because history, as it is often told, is a story of grand, loud events. Our attention is drawn to the clash of swords in battle, the coronations of kings, the great schisms of the church, and the seismic shifts of political power. In this epic narrative, the quiet scraping of a file against a fingernail is a sound too soft to be heard. The personal, daily rituals of the body are often deemed too mundane, too domestic, to warrant a place alongside treaties and successions. Yet, it is in these very details that we often find the most relatable truths of a bygone era. Another reason for its obscurity lies in the nature of the historical sources themselves. While we have detailed sumptuary laws dictating what fabrics and furs different classes were allowed to wear, there were no such laws governing the length or shape of one's nails. The evidence is more subtle, pieced together from different kinds of clues. We find it in the idealized portraits and manuscript illuminations, where noble and holy figures are consistently depicted with slender, immaculate hands. We find it in the courtly poetry, which sings the praises of a lady's ivory fingers, a description that would be utterly ruined by the image of unkempt nails. We find it in etiquette manuals, which advised on graceful gestures and clean hands at the table. And we infer it from our understanding of the social structure, where the most potent symbol of nobility was a body free from the marks of labor. Historians act as detectives, assembling these disparate clues to reconstruct a practice that was so deeply ingrained in its time that few thought it necessary to describe in practical, step-by-step detail. It was simply a part of life, as natural and necessary as breathing for those at the top. This tradition of meticulous hand care did not, of course, vanish at the end of the Middle Ages. It evolved. As the medieval world gave way to the Renaissance, with its renewed focus on humanism and classical aesthetics, the ideals of beauty and refinement became even more pronounced. The tools might have become slightly more sophisticated, the balms and perfumes more complex, but the fundamental principle remained the same. Well-kept hands were a sign of high status, education, and civilized living. This quiet thread of elegance, woven through the private chambers of medieval castles, continued to run through the courts and salons of Europe for centuries to come, a lasting legacy of a world defined by visible order. Let us find you one last time, then, in that world. The years have spun on, carrying with them the seasons of your life. You are no longer the young, impressionable page, nor the courtier in their prime. You are the lord or lady of your own estate now, your hair turned the color of silver or snow. The boisterous energy of youth has softened into the quiet wisdom of age. It is a winter evening. A great fire crackles in the hearth of your solar, its flames casting a warm, orange glow on the tapestries that now depict the deeds of your own ancestors. Outside, the wind howls a lonely song around the stone battlements, but here, inside, there is a deep and abiding peace. You are sitting in your favorite chair, a heavy fur blanket draped across your knees. Your hands, which once learned the silent language of the court, now rest in your lap. They are not the hands of your youth. The skin, once pale and smooth, is now a delicate map of your life, marked with the fine lines of time and the occasional faint brown spot, like a pressed flower. A blue vein, more prominent than before, traces a path across the back of your hand. Your knuckles are a little thicker, and sometimes, in the cold, they ache with a dull, familiar complaint. You absently rub the joint of your thumb, and as you do, you look down at your own fingers. And a memory, soft and distant as a dream, surfaces. You see another hand, a younger hand, your own, many decades ago, presenting a silver needle case. You feel again that sudden, hot blush of shame at the sight of a single, tiny line of dirt beneath your nail. You remember the serene perfection of the Duchess's hand, a vision of pale skin and pearly, rounded nails. It seems a lifetime ago, and indeed it was. You look at your own nails now. They are still kept short and clean, the habit of a lifetime too deep to be forgotten. Your maid, a young girl whose grandmother probably served you as a youth, still attends to them each week with a knife and a file, though her hands are not as steady as Agnes's once were. But the purpose feels different now. It is less about public performance and more about personal comfort, about maintaining a sense of order and dignity in the face of time's gentle erosion. Your grandchild, a spirited boy of 10, comes into the room to bid you good night. He leans against the arm of your chair, and you place your hand on his head, your fingers stroking his soft hair. He shows you his own hand, proudly displaying a wooden knight he has been carving. You look at his small, busy fingers, smudged with dirt and marked with a tiny splinter. You smile. You know that soon enough, his tutor or his mother will chide him, will sit him down with a basin of warm water and a stern lesson on the importance of clean hands for a boy of his station. You know that he too will learn the silent language. The thread continues. You close your eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire. You reflect on the countless, forgotten rituals that made up your life, that made up your entire world. The morning grooming, the choice of a gown, the precise way to hold the goblet, the careful arrangement of one's hands in prayer. These were the things that history books would never record, the small, repeated gestures that, woven together, created the very fabric of an era. The clean nails were never just about nails. They were about discipline. They were about showing the world, and reminding yourself, that you belong to a world apart, a world of order and grace, shielded from the raw chaos of survival. It was a beautiful, fragile performance, and you played your part for a lifetime. The fire settles into glowing embers, and the room grows quieter still. The memories of your long life, of gleaming hands and flickering torchlight, begin to soften at the edges, dissolving like sugar in warm wine. The great feasts, the whispered conversations, the weight of a velvet sleeve against your arm, they all recede, becoming part of a story that is no longer yours alone, but belongs to the ages. The world you knew, with its strict codes and silent languages, is itself becoming a ghost, a half-remembered dream in the minds of the young. The elegance of your time, once so vital and present, is now settling, like fine dust, onto the pages of history. But it is not truly gone. It sleeps in the portraits on the wall, in the verses of old poems, in the faint, pearlescent sheen that can still be coaxed from a simple fingernail with a piece of soft leather. It is a quiet legacy of a time when beauty was found in the smallest details, and status was held, quite literally, in the palm of one's hand. The warmth from the hearth coaxes a gentle drowsiness, and the long, winding story of your life begins to merge with the peaceful silence of the night. Sleep now. Let the memories rest.